and everything is there, and everything is working. Hello, 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 everyone. This is Mxiety, and I am on tonight with Eva, Una, Love. They are a fantastic human being, and they are on tonight to talk with us about mental health and gender equality. Hi, Eva. Hi. Say hi to everybody.
Thank you so much for having me on Mxiety. I really appreciate it.
Oh my goodness. It took way too long for me to get you on. That's number one. And that's not my fault. That's totally not your fault. But I'm just excited to have you here now. So thank you everybody who's come in. Whether you're from Eva's stream or you're just here popping in because the topic is of interest to you. I know my mods are gonna have their hands full tonight, and that's totally okay because we are all about making sure that that we have good conversations, full-on discussions with as much research in our background as we could possibly do. And so I'm just gonna friggin' start. Can you, Eva, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I stream here on Twitch, and that's where I primarily am. And I focus on intersectional feminism primarily, and basically having a cozy environment for activists to grow and learn together with allies. And that's our whole goal, smashing the patriarchy, bringing down the hierarchy. So, oh,
Okay.
and I,
Wait,
what?
no, I was gonna say you gotta back up and tell us what a patriarchy is and what a hierarchy is, but finish your sentence. I'm sorry, I'm so excited.
No, yeah, you're absolutely fine. So, the patriarchy is the system of sexism. A while back in feminist history, the shift went from men being oppressors to the patriarchy being a system that is basically upholding sexist oppression, which means it's not just men upholding this, but it's also women can uphold it. Non-binary people like me can uphold this through our actions. And then we can do that through institutions like the government and things like that. That's the patriarchy. And then the hierarchy is like all of the oppressive systems. So not just the patriarchy, which is sexism, but perhaps racist oppression, right? The system that keeps racist oppression going. So intersectional feminists believe that these issues interlock, and to get rid of all oppressions, we need to, or to get rid of the patriarchy, we need to get rid of all oppression. So historically, feminists didn't really do this. They have used like racism, for example. The suffragettes used racism as a tool to try to get women the vote. We don't want to be doing that. That's not helpful.
Right.
So we're not stepping on other people trying to get our rights. That's not okay. And so that's why intersectional feminism is so important, and moving forward in the theory has been great. But I was going to say, additionally, I studied gender studies in school, and I got a double major in gender studies and psychology. So psychology is also a huge interest of mine, specifically mental health. And I'm really excited to be on chatting with you about it.
That's
Thank you.
awesome. Oh, thank you. Oh my goodness. Okay, so what brought you into being interested into gender studies? Like, is there a story back there?
Yes. So this is kind of funny, actually. I stumbled into, well, it was actually called women's studies, but you can also call
Yes.
it gender studies
Yes.
or feminist studies. But if we called it feminist studies here, we'd surely get defunded much faster.
Oh my god. Okay, let's back up, you guys. What is feminism? Everybody with me. It's the belief in the equality of the sexes, okay?
Yes,
Before
yes.
anybody says, like, don't hate men, because I know that that's the next thing that comes around of, like, shouldn't women not hate men? And it's not any of those things, and it's not gender specific. Like, just stop. Just don't do that. That's not what it's about. Okay, so I feel like we have to backtrack and define a bunch of stuff so that as we go
Sorry.
forward, no, don't be sorry. So as we go forward, if somebody comes in and tries to troll us, we can be like, yo, go watch the VOD, you ding dong. Yeah. Okay, so thank you so much, everybody. You guys know the question queue is open. As you guys know, during interviews, I can't pay attention as much to chat, but you enter your questions one question at a time, exclamation, the letter Q, and we will get to them and we'll be going through them. But the main idea is to obviously interview Eva and learn about them more and, really focus on like what they bring to the table and what their thoughts are and opinions. And then pick their brain for questions. So bear with me, everybody. I think you guys are going to have a great time because we are on for a ride. Okay, back to you. You were actually answering a question.
Gender studies. How I got into, it's called women's studies at our college. I actually didn't want to take a women's studies course, but it fit one of like my gen eds, and the counselor or whatever you call them, she's like, hey, listen, this really fits your schedule super well. It's going to knock out some of your gen ed classes, and it's really, it's a great course. And I'm like, women's studies, okay, I guess. And literally little Eva's thinking like, I'm gonna go in there and I'm gonna be learning how to knit.
Oh no.
I'm like, shit. This is gonna be the worst. I hate it already. And then I get in there and I get this thing called feminism, and I'm like, what? This is wild. And the head of the department, women's studies department, actually taught that course, and she's like, hey, listen, you are really outspoken in this course. I really think that you should consider, like maybe minoring or majoring in this. And I'm like, I'm there. We are there. And so that's how it happened. I was really excited, but I grew up in a conservative area, and I'm still there. Ooh. And so I had no idea about feminism. I know that as I've grown up and I've seen my friends on Facebook from high school, they've got all these misconceptions about feminism now. Yes. And I'm like, yes. I could have been there. I could have like totally had this really bad view that's just full of misinformation about feminism, but here I am.
How do you have the patience to talk to people and like explain this stuff over and over and over again?
I think for me, it's understanding where I came from and realizing that my mods, so in my chat personally, I know my mods are gonna clear anyone out who's in bad faith and intentionally upsetting people. And then if someone is there and they genuinely care and they genuinely want to learn, I'm there for you 100% the whole way. And it can be frustrating for sure, but I know that I've had some difficult behaviors in the past that I've had to unlearn. So it's just believing in a better world and having the patience to walk people through and having that reward of people coming back and saying, hey, you've helped me reduce my meat consumption, or you've helped me really see the world in a different way, or like all these different things I hear, I think is really empowering. So definitely the team and the hope for a better world and understanding where I came from, because, we all start somewhere.
Right. So do you think that, was there something that like really, really clicked in the message for you? What happened that you were like, this is the calling, this is the thing that I need to do? And then the follow-up question is, what the heck do you do with that degree? But let's
Of course, I hear this a lot. So you might have to bring me back to the degree question.
That's fine.
But I think the thing that clicked with me is I grew up with a very rigid idea of what women are in regards to sexuality. We had this kind of, you could be either a slut, whore. Yes. I'm sorry if I don't know if you go into these topics.
No, we go all into this. You're fine. There's not we talk about suicide regularly, so you saying slut and whore to explain what you're talking about is not the worst thing that's been said here, so we're good.
Okay, just making sure. But I had this view growing up based on everyone in high school that women were either slut, whores, or virgins. And this really, something, internalization, I really internalized this idea of womanhood. And having it really broken down, I'm trying to think of, there's a piece that really breaks down. I think it's the purity myth is the piece.
Yes. Well, it's a book. It's a whole book. We
had an excerpt from it in one of our books, and we read it, and I was just like, wow. And I even remember I read it. I used to work with intellectually disabled individuals, and while we were at the homes, we would do some of the readings, and my coworker was there, and I was just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And she's like, what the heck? And I'm like, you gotta read this, it's amazing. And she's just like, oh my goodness.
But that's exactly what no, that's literally what happened to me when I was going through, and that was exactly, so what happened at my college, somebody came in and was giving away the purity myth, and I was like, I've heard about this, but it sounds like baloney, but let me give it a shot. And then as I was reading it, I was like, I was knee deep in this all throughout high school, and it blew my mind. I remember that, like what you're describing, I'm feeling that energy, and like I remember that exact feeling that you're describing.
Absolutely. It's mind-blowing, isn't it? You're just like, you see things in such a different way, and it's really liberating. So that was a huge hook for me that really pulled me in. And then I did end up having an abortion, and the women's studies program explaining some things around abortion. At that time, it was really incredible, actually, that the times that this happened, we were really going through the conversation on abortion. And it was just incredible because it was like this, that happened, sorry, a whole lot of like trigger warnings. I just talked about this on Twitter because we had a bit of an episode last night. But I went through a rape and then ended up having an abortion because of that. And the women's studies program covers all of these topics. And so even though I felt very alone regarding people to talk to, I still got to learn about these things and dive into these really like topics that are painful, but suddenly I'm understanding like it isn't my fault, or at least hearing that and hearing all the conversations around abortion, because I had been pro-life just by default, and then suddenly I'm hitting this and I'm like, I cannot go through pregnancy for a billion reasons. And so that was really, really powerful for me. And after that, I was set. I was there. I was not leaving.
Oh my good. Well, you felt that support and you felt welcomed and everything. That's beautiful.
And that was so important.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I know you shared it on Twitter. I know you shared it on your stream, but it's very different to come onto somebody else's show and be that vulnerable. So I just wanted to thank you so much for that.
I know your community is really...
They're good peeps, I promise. Everybody behave. Okay, so it is also, I feel like, a common thing for somebody to go through something that traumatic and through rape, and then to say, all men suck, and I have a hard time trusting anybody, and F all of this, and so you clearly didn't fall down that path. You decided to focus on gender equality instead, and why do you think that is?
Well, I think very early on, I recognized that there were some problems in the way we viewed gender. I couldn't quite pinpoint it until studying actually masculinity studies in the women's studies program, because we do talk about masculinity. We aren't dismantling the patriarchy without having men right by our side. But I grew up with my parents divorced, and my mother was an alcoholic and not the greatest mother.
I'm so sorry.
And the courts in Indiana did what a lot of courts unfortunately do. they were like, oh, the mother, even though we had a lot of evidence. And it got to the point, like, we had several things that were like clear negligence.
Yeah.
And she still got to keep my little brother and I, whereas dad is an amazing human being, a fantastic parent. And so it was just absolutely absurd. And it was clearly based on gender. And I recognize that is because of the patriarchy, because we have these roles that say women take care of the children and men are breadwinners. So clearly we got to go to our caretaker, but that's not based on gender. It's absurd.
Yeah.
And so I think it would be like difficult for me to have a negative view like that. I don't like, my dad is such a huge figure in my life. And I recognize that it's not a gender-based thing. It definitely is a person-to-person thing, even though we can look at how masculinity, the box that people are pushed into, can cause really harmful, damaging things to be done by men. It's not inherent in men. It's just part of what our society pushes them to. And so, yeah.
I always am kind of mind blown once I learn something like this. Once I feel, Jesus, I'm gonna use that word. Once I feel woke.
I love it. I'm here for it.
Because you're gonna need to be here for it, because you can't go anywhere. But no, like once you, I use that on purpose, you guys. I know what I said. But. So once you are aware of this stuff, once you are aware that toxic masculinity is created socially, like it's not this dude's fault that he cannot express his emotions. It's because throughout his entire life, nobody told him that it was okay to cry or to actually feel anything in regards to anything, right? So I like, it's so hard then to communicate with people who don't understand that. Like, you're talking about your friends on Facebook, like you see that and you kind of like want to slap somebody up the side of the head with a book. But we're not doing enough to educate people.
Absolutely. I heavily agree with that.
Any thoughts? Yeah, just go ahead. Just do your thing.
No, the misinformation around feminism is really problematic. And then on top of that, people misunderstanding, like hearing the phrase toxic masculinity. A lot of people get really defensive.
I'm sorry. I didn't laugh at you. I laughed at chat. I should sleep, but I'm too woke. I'm sorry. I'm listening.
Is it Titkin?
Yeah, Titkin said it's 1:56 in Denmark. I should sleep, but I'm too woke. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
No, Titkin's fantastic.
Thank you.
But yeah, people will hear this phrase, toxic masculinity, and totally just think it means men are bad.
Right.
And then this perpetuates this very long-standing misconception of feminists that they hate men, when it's a lot more complex than that. And so it's very frustrating to see these terms that I will sit there and sometimes I just want to turn and be like, look, you don't know shit about toxic masculinity. Toxic masculinity is a subset of hegemonic masculinity, which upholds the patriarchy. So shut the fuck up if you can't explain what all that means, because I will wreck you. When people are critiquing it without understanding it, I'm like, you've heard this term and you're salty. Calm down.
And you're just a salty bitch. It's okay.
I'm just like, stop. Just stop. So yeah, it's just frustrating because they take it as a critique of men as a whole, or masculinity as a whole, when really it's just a subset of a much larger concept. And that can be frustrating for sure.
Yeah. And I think, I'm sorry, because you're all about like teaching patience and being patient with people. I don't have to do that. I have to do that with mental health. I have to be patient with people, and I have the patience for that. But when it comes to this stuff, I'm just like, no, just no. I don't have. I'm gonna explain it to you in like 4 sentences from what I know about it, and then I'll probably send them to you, frankly.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. So in terms of toxic masculinity, and let's bring ourselves around to mental health, like what is it exactly that, let's just talk about, and I know this is a huge topic and I'm opening that can of worms. Let's just talk about the differences between the male and female gender when it comes to how we handle mental health issues.
Yeah, so we'll start with toxic masculinity. So I have kind of 3 pillars I talk about in toxic masculinity, and the one we will dive into is emotional suppression. And we have all probably seen at least one. I would be surprised if not many, many more examples of this. I can think of, even though like my dad is my role model, going back home and hearing him tell my little brother, hey, stop crying like a little girl. And feminizing the idea of crying. Right. That's really damaging, especially when being seen as feminine or gay, either one of those, because if you're feminized as a man, then it starts to, well, is he gay? Yeah. And that is bad, in quotes. And so this fear of being emotional or being seen as weak is really damaging, because how do men express their emotions other than we do talk occasionally about how certain emotions are okay, but definitely crying is a problem, things around that. And if you can't express your emotions, it becomes very, I'm sure you can speak to that. It's not good.
Well, you just bottle it up, and then what happens is, it's not that your emotions go away because you've suppressed them. It's what happens is that they literally start, it's like a boiler. So they literally start bubbling under the surface, and they start coming out in different ways, because you can't, no matter how stoic you are, you cannot just take all of your emotions and bottle them up and keep them inside of you. So it's going to come out whether... So the way I describe this is, either you control your emotions or your emotions control you. And when I say control your emotions, it's not what you think. What people normally think is controlling emotions is bottling them up. But controlling them is literally letting them out in controlled ways when appropriate, right? So that is a lot more, that is a lot more acceptable, and that's also extremely misunderstood in mental health. And when it comes to men and mental health, that is the first thing that we usually bump into, is men having bottled up their emotions, and they end up throwing them in different directions, however that is. And you talked about this very briefly with me before, and I really want to dive into this, and that's the whole... So if you don't have, it's not that if you don't have somebody supporting you emotionally through, let's say your more emotional needs, right? That's considered a feminine thing. Being emotional, it's a feminine thing. So what ends up happening is not that those needs aren't there, it's that men end up pushing those things onto women, and making women the caretakers for those parts of their lives. So this is where you like, I've definitely had the boyfriend where he would be like, oh bro, and like, yeah dude, whatever, around his guys, and then like he would come to me and be like, I feel so not confident, I can't believe like I feel all these things, and telling me about his emotions. And I'm like, yeah, well, why don't you talk to your like guys, maybe they'll understand you a little bit better than even I would, because they have a similar experience to you. And he's like, no, I would never tell them, you know. But what ends up happening is that guy was constantly coming to me, constantly bringing his problems to me. And then what ends up happening is that I'm the therapist. They refuse to go to therapy. They refuse to talk to somebody. They refuse to let out their emotions. But the woman now takes the burden of therapizing them and taking care of their emotional needs.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've noticed that with partners, and then also I've had so many, especially in high school, so many of my guy friends, like I was in like the gamer group or whatever, right? And so there's like tons of dudes and then like a few non-dudes and um and it was like everyone saw me as the soft person to go to and talk to about their emotions. But I have like 3 or 4 guys emotionally dumping on me.
Yep.
And then my boyfriend. And I'm just like, y'all, I'm fucking tired. Like, I am very tired.
What about my emotions?
Yeah. Yep. Like, what is with this? And I've actually, one of my mods keeps saying, like, Eva, are these people asking you how you're doing? Are they checking in on you? Where is like, are you taking care of you? And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're right. I've got so many people like that. I'm there to be their emotional support. And I'm just like, listen, y'all need to go make some friends and you need to learn how to talk about your emotions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you need to make actual friends. That's the other thing that I would push. I'd be like, are you really friends with all these dudes? If you guys, it's great that you guys have like Smash and Mario Kart and now Apex in common with, like, that's all fantastic that you have all these things in common. But like, what if tomorrow your mother died? Like, would they be there for you? Would they be able to like support you through that journey of your, like, you're going to need somebody, you know? And
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And then not only that, but getting into how much people rely on their partner.
Yeah.
When it's a heterosexual relationship, the breakup can be a lot rougher on men from that emotional perspective, because he loses, if he doesn't have other friends he's relying on, he loses that core emotional support. Yeah. Whereas someone who has those friends that you can go and talk to, cry to, or whatever, you have that support. You're going to be okay. I always worry when I break up with a guy. I'm like, listen, do you talk to your friends about emotions? Like, if I'm dating you and you're a dude and I ask you that, something's coming.
Listen, so I just need to know, what is your emotional support network like? No reason at all, but I feel like that's how you should start relationships. To be fair, you should start, not end them that way, but start there and then work backwards and then see. The person that I ended up marrying, we went through this journey together for sure, where we both had to go through the acceptance of what it means to go to a therapist, take medication for mental health, and all the stigma that's surrounding that is not, even without the gender attached to it. But there were still moments where, like, he would be going through something and I would say, all right, it's time for you to go to your therapist. And he'd be like, no, I got this. And I'm like, dude, you know the script. I'm sorry to tell you. You know, you've taken medication before. You know what you're supposed to do to self-care. You're not doing those things. Your therapist isn't, like, you know that you're not going to go to your therapist because you're a pussy or because you can't handle your shit or whatever stupid thing. Like, I know you know better than this. So what stubbornness bullcrap are you pulling right now that you won't go? Yeah.
Absolutely. I hear you.
Yeah. I was also going through that. So somebody very close to me, their marriage is it's not running at 100%. And I was like, and I said it very flippantly. Like, I was just like, you guys should go to therapy. And she's like, he'd never go for that. And I was like, oh, I'm scared, but I'm going to ask why. And they're like, well, you know, they just think that we should be able to work it out on our own. And I'm like, but you haven't. So then you ask somebody to help you mediate that. Yeah. Or
getting help is a good thing.
Right. Because the alternative is you don't have a marriage anymore. I don't know how that's the solution, but yeah. but this emotional burn, I feel like it happens at work as well, right? We run into where women are the emotional carrier, like, hey, I'm worried I'm gonna get fired. Who are you going to say that to? Your female coworker, or if you're male presenting, are you gonna say that to your female coworker, or are you gonna go up to your boss and be like, I'm really nervous you might fire me? Like, that's not a conversation that happens in most modern workplaces, right?
No, it's certainly not. Certainly not.
Yeah,
absolutely. So there is a lot of emotional burden. And that's one of the things that I recommend, like, to guys who are allies, just to recognize, like, where are you putting your emotions, and are you fostering a relationship with your guy friends where you can go and you can have these conversations? Because it's going to be tough, but it's really important for you to be able to break that ice. And if your friends aren't cool with that, are they really who you want to be around? I know it's tough, but it's really important. Really important.
Do you have any maybe suggestions on how somebody would do that and how somebody would break that ice?
That's a good question. So I always struggle to, like, other than saying, hey, this is a really important thing, I try to leave that up to guys to figure that out, because I don't know the dynamics as well as they would. Other than being able to say, like, something I do is just being vulnerable myself, or I think being vulnerable in small steps could be helpful, or just asking them questions and asking them questions about their emotions, but that might freak them out. Some people don't like to be vulnerable first.
Right.
So maybe just opening it up with small steps, because you don't want to show up and just all of a sudden be like, listen, and just drop everything. I think that would freak nearly anyone out who's not used to that. So, I mean, I'm not going to be the best to have advice on that, because I don't necessarily know the dynamics, but at the same time, I have a little experience doing this. So maybe that's the way you could go about it.
Do you find that I feel like women have a different, there's a different issue with being emotionally open with each other. There's a lot of competition, first of all, in terms of, like, we're brought up to compete with each other. And I feel like there's their own, it has its own set of issues, right, when it comes to, like, mental health and women. So I know we're really emphasizing the male part and the masculinity issue, but I feel like women also have a hard time being vulnerable with each other. And also there's this idea that, like, you're supposed to be able to handle everything while also being, like, super gracious and kind and sweet and not too much anything, right? So anything, do you want to speak to that at all?
So I don't dive into the competition aspects super much, but I guess for me, I always tend to go the route of, people say, oh, well, toxic masculinity. What about toxic femininity? That's a false equivalence. We won't get into all of that. And one of the core reasons is because when you become feminist, you start realizing that these behaviors are just damaging. And if you can find equality, you don't need them. That whole thing I'm going to be covering in the future. But if anyone ever wants to talk about toxic,
I kind of want the spoil. I want the spoiler version.
Do you want to go into it?
Yeah, this is fascinating, because we did briefly talk about this, and I like, Tally brought it up, and I do believe that it's an important discussion, because immediately I have talked about men and mental health before, and the whole aspect of, like, you end up bottling it up and it's worse for you and all of that. But then when it comes to women and mental health, like you said, people try to create that equivalent, but it's not necessarily there. And I like what you said about the whole, there's not necessarily an equivalency, and I kind of want to, like, I want to deep into that. Yeah.
So, okay, yeah. Typically when people come in and they're like, well, what about toxic femininity, right? It's kind of a knee-jerk reaction. Maybe they've been hurt by certain things that happen. And there are a few things that we can talk about, right? So we can talk about, for example, the child custody, and my mother would threaten my dad, I'm going to take the kids away from you, right? So things like taking the kids away, a common one is false rape accusations, which I hate
Right.
talking about this because as a man, you are more likely statistically to be raped by another man than to be falsely accused of rape. So all the hype around this is a little absurd. Not that it isn't a problem that we
Right.
want to reduce,
Right.
but it's getting blown out of proportion.
Yes.
And additionally, it's used as a way to silence people coming forward and to
Yes.
shame them.
Yes.
So we don't want to be doing that, or to distract the conversation. Because whenever, like, we were talking about sex workers a while back and decriminalization, and someone was like, well, they need to sign a waiver that says, you know, they weren't raped. And I was like, oh no, because they're like false rape accusations. And I'm like, we are talking about a particular topic, and you are like false rape accusations, and it's just exhausting.
It's like saying Hitler in an argument, right? Like
yeah, you're just like, stop, like stop.
Yeah.
It becomes very frustrating. But what I say when I say that these aren't comparable, toxic. So there are two things that I point to. The first one is toxic masculinity is a part of upholding the patriarchy and upholding the power that I hate to say the power that men have, but what I would say is the power that the men in power have. Because we're not going to act as if all men just have ridiculous amounts of power or whatever the case, right?
Right. Because you talk about whataboutism, that's usually the next thing that happens. As soon as you say men in power, there's somebody who's like, well, I don't have any power. And you're like, you're not, then sit down.
Yeah. Sorry. It's like, well, is that classism? Is that ableism?
Right.
Is that homophobia?
Yeah.
You really think it's sexism, my buddy? Yeah. My dude?
Yeah.
Like, it can be a whole bunch of other things, but I doubt it's because you're a dude. And that's the frustration all the time. But there's definitely a pecking order within masculinity, just like there is within the feminine realm, because, you know, and that's who has the most man card. I don't think that's how, but
it's fine. We're using it. We're going with that. Sure, man card.
Yeah. But toxic masculinity is meant to be a part of upholding that power. I'm trying to think of like an example, the threat of violence, for example. So the three pillars are emotional suppression, showing kind of strength, right? And then we have the ability to receive and deal violence. So associations with men and war, assuming that men will be the perpetrators of violence, but women can't, right? Women are not violent.
Right.
Which is absurd.
Right.
And then sexual conquest, to the point it's damaging. So we see the patriarchy being upheld with, for example, the threat of violence in men using violence against women. Well, this is kind of like the two combined, sexual conquest and violence combined, but the fear of rape if you're going out and about, right? And so women are supposed to really be careful, whereas men are more likely, depending on where you're at, there's some classism and racism in this as well. But men ideally can go out and about without having that fear. It gives them greater power in society that they don't have to worry about those things. That's a very small example.
Right. And the whole, like there's really not there's a double standard in clothing as well. You know, like attire. I can go out if I go out in a certain outfit, I will definitely be judged, and it will, you know, the whole victim blaming will come in. Whereas, you know, that really also doesn't really happen for men. There's no, and it's allowing greater freedom, greater power. Right.
So that upholds the patriarchy. Whereas if you look at toxic femininity, it is typically women trying to grab power that isn't theirs by using basically whatever they can in that system. So an example would be, you know, my mother saying, I'm going to take the kids away from you. oh, big deal. Society already says that you are supposed to be at home taking care of the kids, and that's not what's valued by society. So another part of this is understanding what's valued currently by society. So if you're at home taking care of the kids, you're not having political power, you're not out and about having financial power, and that's what's valued. So toxic femininity, if you will, is women trying to swoop power or damage in ways that definitely can hurt men, but aren't typically valued by society or seen as positive necessarily. So that's one way that it's a false equivalence. And then the other way is the actual damage done. So I'm trying to think, like, what are some of the damages done? Like kids taken, this isn't to belittle this. It's still a significant problem and we want to deal with it. But that compared to the extreme amount, like 1 in 2 women experience some form of sexual violence in the US. It's an absurd number. In the sheer amount of damage done, which you can't really quantify it, but it's mind-boggling, the difference. So it's really a false equivalence. And then the last thing that I typically say is, once we get rid of the patriarchy, which the easiest way to do that is dismantling the power systems, the need for these tools that women are scrambling with that are obviously damaging goes away. Once I stop seeing women as my competitors, I lose that like, I don't want to say it's like cattiness, that backstabby, whatever the heck, you know. When I work together with my partner and I'm not like, we are equals, there's no reason for me to threaten to take away the kids. You know, these things become obsolete. So that's always my frustration. But one of the things regarding mental health in toxic femininity that we can talk about is expression of anger. And that's where we get our passive aggressiveness, right? When we think of women and expressing their emotions, it's become a bit of a joke, right? That, okay, have fun. Have you heard of this? The guy's going out with his friends and, okay, have fun. Have you heard that, seen that idea around that? It's like, oh, abort mission because she's mad. And it's really a petty thing. It's really unfortunate.
And it really shouldn't, like, we take the gender out of it if we just, like, had a discussion. If instead of having that pettiness and that backhanded whateverness, if we just had a discussion and been like, I'm not comfortable with you going out. It's not about her being a woman and you being a man or vice versa. It's about the fact that, like, she's uncomfortable or they're uncomfortable. And And so I know that for me personally, I don't know, I'm curious if you've had this, or chat if you're familiar with this as well. But I know that I have previously really internalized this idea of the naggy girlfriend or naggy wife. I'm not that girl.
You don't want to be a drag, so you don't express your frustrations.
Oh my gosh,
And this is a really interesting concept. I know that I have suppressed a lot of frustration. And this is funny because this just goes to show how these things don't necessarily have to play out in a heterosexual relationship.
Of course.
I was dating a woman and we had the roles just so that I was doing a lot of the cleaning and she was doing a lot of the paying the bills. And that was just what was chosen. But I would, like, literally finish a whole thing of laundry. And this is the only time I got kind of, like, petty, if you will. But I was trying not to be petty. But it's like I literally come back the next day and the whole laundry basket is full. And I just wanted to cry. I'm like, I literally I literally washed all of our laundry,
Yeah.
all of it,
Yeah.
folded it. You haven't put it away. Like, all I ask is that you put yours away. That's
Right.
it. And that's
Right.
because I don't know where it goes.
Right.
So, like, and there's a whole basket. So I dumped it all out and I separated it into piles. And I had like a pair of underwear and a tank top. And literally the whole rest of the thing was hers. And I took a picture and I'm like, I am being a naggy girlfriend, but I am going to snap. I am going to snap. I just need a little bit of like, can you just pick up your dish once in a blue moon?
Right.
Like, please?
But those things like have nothing to do with gender. Like, that's just a person being a pig. Like, you know, having like a little, I call it little piggy moments. Like, oh, are you being a little piggy right now? Like, that's not, it's not, it doesn't have to be tied to the naggy girlfriend, but that's immediately where it goes to. Like, how many times we ran into the issue in my relationship, I say we, meaning myself and my husband, where in the beginning of the relationship, we would bump into, we have a huge group of friends. And the guys, what happened was he would use me as an excuse to not do something. And I didn't know about this. But it was like, oh, yeah, my girlfriend. And this was like eons. Like, we were both very young and little, so I hope it's okay that I bring it up. But like, we were like 19, 20, right? And he would say something like, oh, yeah, Marie doesn't want me going out, so I think I'm going to stay in. And then I turn around and be like, I don't fucking care if you go out.
Yeah.
How is this my problem now? Right. But it was because the trope is so out there and like, oh, yeah, well, she's doing her girlfriend thing, so we all have to oblige. Sucks, right? Like, that's awful. The whole situation scenario is awful.
Yeah, it's dreadful. And it's just, it gives a really negative view of partners and partnership. It just, and it's frustrating. I know that that's something I've internalized a lot. And then your relationship, you don't have that clear communication sometimes if you can't express these things, or you know, you are getting that almost social damage from becoming this naggy girlfriend to kind of blame. And it's really unfortunate.
And then the opposite happens, right, where women actively are trying to fight that, and you might not be comfortable with something, but you say you're cool with it just because you don't want to be that girl. And that's a whole thing. That's a whole other can of worms too.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and that's where that I know some people think of this as part of the toxic femininity, that passive aggression comes out. I can't come to you saying like, hey, listen, I don't want you to do this, and here's why. Oh, well, you're overreacting. And suddenly it becomes a fight when it's just like, I just wanted to talk to you about my concerns, or we need to have this conversation. And all of a sudden it's me nagging you, or it's this or that. So you have these like subtle ways of saying like, I'm mad, but I know I can't say anything. So I do it in a way that is almost deniable. But it's this unclear communication. And I know, like, I have struggled to break this a lot. I've had to actively work with this. And so my partner's like, I know something's happening. What's happening? Why don't you just tell me your emotions? And I'm like, because I'm being a naggy girlfriend.
Because I don't want to have them.
I'm like, I'm so sorry. So it's like I had to actively work to get rid of this. It's so ingrained, these ideas.
The pest. So do you think this is at the core? Do you think that is just a communication breakdown? It's a communication issue, period? Or is this like a patriarchal, like gender-based issue?
To me, I definitely think it is attached to that stereotype of women being naggy partners. They're angrier, being devalued. Even, and this is something we see in minorities, not just women, but Black people as well. So an example, there's actually, it's gendered. There's the dangerous Black man who the anger is scary. And then there's the angry Black woman. But then you have the angry man-hating feminist. All these like stereotypes of minorities that have their own ideas around anger that devalue them. Oh, she's just an angry feminist. And your idea there, whatever you're being angry about, suddenly
it doesn't matter.
It's brushed off.
Yeah.
It's brushed off. So I absolutely do think that it is a problem around the patriarchy and for other minorities, different factors. So
I dig that.
But I mean, it absolutely, I think it can end up being like, it leads to a communication breakdown that I absolutely think you can have without the gendered aspects, for sure.
Yeah. It should be, right? If we are to break down the patriarchy, then it would be just people talking to each other.
Yeah.
And then maybe the communication actually would fix itself, because it wouldn't be pushing up against some kind of a stereotype or idea. Oh my gosh. Okay, I think it's time to get to questions. And I just want to say, TD Bell, you gifted Eva a sub earlier. TD Bell in chat's like, I want to gift her a sub. I want to gift them a sub. And I'm like, yeah, but you did. You literally did earlier. You can't be upset that you can't. Yes, you did. That's what started the giveaway earlier, is you gifted Eva and somebody else a sub. It's so funny. So silly. Okay, these are good problems. That's incredible. These are good problems. No, yeah. Oh, UK Sega, thank you so much for the sub. Thank you everybody who subscribed while we were like in our main portion of the chat. Thank you so much for all of your patience. I appreciate it. And again, just thank you so much for all of your support and everything. It's amazing. Yeah, he is the MVP. Used to be social justice war. Oh, I know, UK Sega. Oh, okay. I sub because you do also. Oh, that's so sweet. It was another TD Bell. Okay, TD Bell. So we have all of your questions. If you would like to add some, please hit exclamation, the letter Q, and your question after that immediately. And we will try to get to them as much as possible. Please know it is one question at a time in the queue, so you cannot ask another question until your question is out of the queue. And then we close it after a little while. Okay, so, and I believe we'll be doing another sticker giveaway, so everybody stick around after Eva is done. We will be doing another giveaway. Okay, here we go with our queue. Oh, only 2 questions. I got really scared. I thought I saw more questions going around. Okay, here we go. They're going in. They're coming in. Okay. Tally Twitch asks, what do you think of feminist groups that try to promote feminism by simply standing on their genders rather than equality? They're promoting just anti-chivalry. Chivalry. You got it. You pronounced it right.
Can you paste this in a chat so I can read it myself? I am so sorry.
No. It's okay. I'm trying to figure out how I can I actually can't. I cannot do that.
Okay.
There's no... So I'll repeat it if that's okay. What do you think of feminist groups that try to promote feminism by simply standing on other genders rather than equality? They're promoting anti-chivalry. Chivalry. Yep.
So I don't know 100% what you're referring to. I think I would need an example, but when you say anti-chivalry, I think there's a little bit of misunderstanding there. If your chivalry is based on gender, which typically it is, that's just called benevolent sexism. And it's really inconvenient. So what I mean by this, let's take a really kind of silly, but still good example of this. Opening the door for women, right? A lot of people, I'm non-binary, but a lot of people I like see me and they're like, oh, you know, a woman. And if someone holds the door open for me, fucking great. I love that shit. Except for, you know, when I'm like away back and I'm in heels or whatever, and I'm like, click, 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 because I feel rude. Right. But what I get really frustrated with is when I'm holding the door, there's a wave of people, and it's always like a middle-aged to older dude. He decides he's gonna, I don't know why, I don't know if it's my gender or what, my perceived gender, but he decides to do that thing. Have you seen that thing where he puts his hand above the door and he like moves over awkwardly and he's trying to let you through.
Yeah, so he's like,
there's a
no,
wave
no,
of
no,
people-
you please, you cannot hold the door. You possibly, this is too difficult for you. I cannot possibly let you hold it. Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, listen, now I've got to squeeze past someone I don't know, uncomfortably, enter a wave of people that are probably going to run over me, and this is not fun. Could you fucking not? Thanks. It's very frustrating. It's very frustrating. So I'm just like, listen, I don't care your gender, your genitals.
Your janitor.
Yeah,
fine.
your janitor. I don't care any of that. Hold the door when it's convenient. Use your brain rather than this weird thing based on gender.
Yeah.
Is someone holding something? Are their arms full? Is there some reason they will struggle with the door? Are you first and it will be easier or just kind?
Yeah.
Go for it. If you are holding something or you are going to make them do some awkward things so that you can hold the door, maybe don't.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah, it's the equivalent. I feel like it's the equivalent of somebody like counter argumenting to counter complimenting when you're like, oh, you look really nice, and they're like, no, you look really nice. I understand why you're doing it. I just don't think you need to do that at all.
Yeah. And then also, the last thing I would say regarding chivalry is a lot of people do chivalry because they think, well, I'm holding the door because I don't know, do you think it will be difficult for women to open the door? Do you think it's showing elevated respect to women?
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you a little secret. If you have elevated respect for women, first off, maybe just have normal respect for them. Because it's just weird and based on gender, and why do you got to do that? And if you want to have normal respect, then you're going to hold the door for everyone, and it's not a gender-based thing. And if you are dying to help women out, I'm going to tell you a little secret. I don't need help with the door, but I would love for you to go out and advocate for policies that help women, or just literally any activism helping women. Don't open the door. It's fine. We'll manage. I will
open my own door if you could just be pro-choice instead of pro-life. That'd be great.
Yeah, basically, that's how I feel. I'm just like, y'all, there are much better ways to help out. Much better ways.
Oh my gosh. You're the best. Yeah. I absolutely adore that. That's like that's so well said. That's the Twitter clip right there. So well said. Okay, so I've been trying to get copies for you of the question. So here is our next question, and I'm pasting it into chat. Right, meow.
Thank you.
Okay. The question is, what do you think about things like quota to preferably choose minorities, including women, queers, and all, for open positions in jobs and schools? Or lifting the sometimes strict requirements on skills for universities for those groups just to get a higher minority group in?
All right, so a quota, preferably choosing minorities. We can certainly talk. I talk about this occasionally regarding people of color, specifically Black people, right? One of the issues, I'm not going to say that this is the perfect way to solve this, because I don't necessarily think it is. It depends on what we're using it for, right? But I'm going to assume we're talking about, I can't think of the word. There's a word for this.
I can't think of the word for you. I can't picture it.
It's regarding like getting minorities into workplaces.
Yeah. Oh, shoot.
Someone's got this. I know you got it.
You got this. Diverse.
Something action?
Yes. Wait, you got it. It is something action.
Affirmative.
Yes,
Angels. Thank you so much. So very on. So affirmative action, for example, is just trying to help get minorities in various positions. And a huge part of this is just the incredible wealth gap. And if you're in the States, you might understand, maybe not, but you might understand if you've ever struggled with money, that struggling with money is hard and being poor is expensive. It's incredibly difficult. So having some ways to boost people who are struggling up is going to be incredibly helpful. If you understand the wealth disparity that Black people versus white people have in the US, it is disgusting. It is intense. And that's from our history of slavery, which I know every, like, white people are like,
you said the word, but
I
not
didn't
me.
Have slaves.
Yeah.
Okay, but I'm not saying you had slaves. I'm saying these people were enslaved for a very long time. And then finally we fought a civil war and they got out, right? After all of this horrible shit.
And then another 100 years of them not having rights at all.
Yep. And we didn't give them anything. We were going to give them something, but then the South got all mad and we literally took it back.
Right.
Like, it's fucked up. It's fucked up. And so how are we trying to deal with that? We're trying to have affirmative action. And again, I'm not going to say it's the best way, but it's meant to help those people start finding opportunities because it is difficult. And then not only that, a lot of people go, well, what if they're less qualified? The fact that they're less qualified in itself
is partly because of the system.
Is because of the system. Yeah. And so, does it suck? Yeah, I could understand why people are frustrated, but I think at some point we need to stop thinking, well, this isn't fair on such a shallow level and understanding what people went through and why things are the way they are. We're assuming that everyone's starting at equal grounding, and they're not. They're not. And we can argue the same for women based on how women have been treated historically. But it's definitely not the same. So that's my stance there. Is it isn't necessarily the perfect solution. I'm sure there are good critiques of it, but it's a good start. It's a good start.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that very, very detailed answer. So I was not able to find the next two questions, but they're short. So you might not need to visualize them. Lautrec, or Lautrec? I don't know.
Lautrec? I don't know.
Lautrec. First question, it's all in caps. First question, who is the most precious little NB cinnamon bun and why is it Eva? Okay. Thank you for that. Thank you.
Am I supposed to answer that?
I don't know. It's up to you. Hi, Ella. Hello. Oh my gosh. Who is it? It's you! Yay! Look, it's them!
Me.
Oh my gosh. Hi. Okay. Do you think, Octopus Aaron asked, how do you think the LGBTQ community can better show up to support social change and feminism within the community?
Ooh.
How do you think the LGBTQ community can better show up to support social change and feminism within the community?
Pronouns. As a non-binary individual, I know that I went to Pride this year and I immediately regretted dressing feminine.
Oh.
Because everyone just assumed. And I was like, this is the one place I wish that people got it.
Yeah.
Because it's not the LGBT community, it's the LGBTQIA plus community.
Yeah.
There's definitely the T in there, and recognizing that and being there for that. And the thing is, I even had like a trans pride flag hat on. So I'm like, there's even a hint, and people still just assuming. So if you are wondering how to do that, this is something everyone here can do. When you do your introductions, I know a lot of people are putting their pronouns in their bios. That is fantastic on Twitter. I love that. Allies doing that and trans people doing that. Fantastic. Now, the next step that I argue is normalizing it in introductions. And so when you introduce yourself, just make it a part of your introduction, whether you're cis or whether you're trans. Just say, hi, my name is Eva Unilove. I go by they, them pronouns, except for maybe don't use my name and my pronouns because that's a little weird. So doing that does Two things. First off, it lets everyone know your pronouns and understand that you don't want to assume people's pronouns because you don't really know. You might come across someone who is assigned female at birth and dressed very feminine, goes by he, him pronouns. That happens. It happens. The second thing is when I go to say, hi, my name is Eva Unilov. I go by they, them pronouns. Suddenly, I'm not the one doing something weird because I have been, if any of you know the Raj Royale.
We've heard of it a little bit here and there. Yeah, something. I think he had 30,002 viewers tonight. And it was, yeah, okay. Sorry.
So this is, of course, an extreme example, but it doesn't surprise me. I go in, I say, hi, my name is Eva Unilov. I go by they, them pronouns, and we won't name any names, but someone goes, why do you think being LGBTQIA is a personality trait? I'm like, what the fuck do you mean? But if Destiny would have, because Destiny was first, if Destiny would have said, hi, my name is Destiny, I go by he, him pronouns, he would have had to pick on Destiny, not Lil Soft Eva, or had to come after me directly for my pronouns rather than a weird thing I was doing. So if we normalize this, it's really good for everyone, essentially, but really helpful to trans individuals.
Okay. All right. How do you feel about allies? Because this has come up before, and I've seen these arguments, and I have an opinion on it. And it might not be a correct opinion, but I have not one that I'm going to stand so firmly behind and argue about, but it's one that I have. Okay, so here we go. So how do you feel about allies not putting their pronouns in their bios? Honestly, it's 280 characters. I don't have enough room, but sorry. So what do you think?
Yeah, I'm not, I don't get super huffy about it.
Okay. I'm
just like, okay, whatever. It happens. I know that I only have so many characters. I'm not going to eat someone alive for it. I'm just going to, I'm going to be like, okay, that happened, and then move on. And now if they start, intentionally being a shitlord.
Sure, that's different.
Then we have a problem.
Sure.
But I'm not going to, explode. Believe it or not, I'm literally not going to explode.
You're not waiting for the opportunity to jump down on men's throats, you feminist creature. I don't know.
I was waiting for feminazi right there, but it didn't happen.
I could have said, I don't know how to be properly mean. I have just enough meanness from knowing about it, and then it just drops off like a cliff. I got nothing. Because my whole thing was, because somebody went on a huge rant on Twitter recently saying, if you don't have pronouns, you're not an ally, you're not respectful. And I was just like, I understand where it's coming. I understand where that anger is coming from. But, I also don't think, I'm okay. If somebody said they, them, or said he, him to me, I would be very okay with correcting. I am female presenting, so there's a very high chance that nobody would do that. But if somebody were to try to do that out of disrespect or something, or just to make a point, I could see myself just correcting them, and then I think I would move on. I don't think it would upset me. And if it would upset me, then I could see myself taking out of those 280 characters and making sure that she, her is in there. So
yeah.
I don't, and then I felt bad because I was like, am I a terrible person for not wanting to use my characters for specifically that?
No, I personally am not bothered by it. What I am that is a small show of solidarity, and I really appreciate the people who are doing it. But to me, there are much bigger things that now, if I come onto your channel and you're intentionally misgendering me over and over and over again, then I'm mad.
Right.
But I'm not particularly upset about that, no. And I don't know why that person was so salty. I hope they're having a better day today.
Yeah, that's what I said. Yeah, they were very upset, and I don't remember even if they were male or female presenting or anything like that. I just remember they were very, very upset, and they were saying like it's not helping promote the movement, and it's not like you're doing nothing to end inequality. And I was like, I don't think I'm doing nothing, but okay.
Yeah, that's a little bizarre.
A little bit too much. It's gatekeepy. There you go. Yeah. Yes, there you go. Bliffle, I do agree with that. Okay, there are more questions, and then I can let you go. Okay, what is your view on Hollywood feminism and representation? Asked Tidkin.
Oh boy.
Here we go.
Yeah. So I think some people can do okay, right? Like, if you would consider Emma Watson and what she's doing, he for she, like, she has stepped up, and I'm really proud of her. Mm-hmm. But I also see, like, Taylor Swift is trying to pick up some ideas. And what we're going to see in Hollywood feminism is not as helpful as it could be. Mm-hmm. I hesitate to say that it's as damaging as there not to be Hollywood feminism, though.
Right.
And so, like, if Hollywood were just, like, always not trying to be feminist at all, I think that would probably be more of a problem.
Right.
I'm trying to think of the ways that it could damage feminism. But I think there's probably a lot of good to be said for people who are trying to represent feminism positively with large platforms, even if they're doing it imperfectly. And ideally, hopefully, they will listen to people and maybe educate themselves a little bit more. Maybe not, but, you know, we can always hope.
So it's basically you'd rather take that than somebody like Kaylee Coco coming out and being like, feminism isn't needed because I've never experienced an issue with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, I definitely think it could improve a ton. Mm-hmm. But in general, I think it's okay.
It's not the worst on the planet. It's not saying very strong, kind words about it, but it's better than nothing.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay. White Velcro asked something, and I'm repasting it into chat, which is what are mental health concerns specific to non-binary people, and how can we help with them? I think you might be touching on this one aspect already with everyone using pronouns.
Yeah. So I think it is likely just helping them through any internalized transphobia they might be experiencing. I know that's my struggle, and the community being there again and again and again for me is really helpful. And what I mean by that is when I'm expressing discomfort around how I present, because I can't wear my binder all the time. So sometimes I dress super femme, and just the community being there to be in solidarity and understand how I cope with my gender dysphoria and being supportive in that way is huge. I would just say supporting them through their transition and being aware of some of those things that they might be going through regarding, you know, people misgendering them, and being there to support them is probably the best. I haven't read anything specifically yet, but also realizing that the pronouns issue, like being there in solidarity in public, if you are with that person, showing solidarity there as well. Trans people, I know I especially, like, I hate correcting people on my pronouns. I hate it because there's as we were talking about, how minorities and anger is seen very negatively. There is the stereotype of trans people screaming at someone who just didn't know, right?
Yeah.
And I always have that in the back of my mind. So I never, like, we go in, I'll raid over into another channel, and this person will be fucking up my pronouns the whole time. And, you know, Velcro's there. Hey, Eva goes by they, them. And I've got like three. And then I'm like, and then my community's like letting them. I'm like, okay. They got it. Yeah. I'm like, but that means a lot to me, having people there to do that. As for people other than me, I haven't got to do any research into this yet. I just recently came out, and I'm still exploring and learning.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's like super vulnerable of you, and I just thank you. Thank you for that. Okay. I don't know about this question, but Tally Twitch asked this. How would you suggest determining the preferred pronoun for someone you met without directly asking them? As you said, someone who was born a gender dressed as the same does not necessarily identify as that gender. So do you have any suggestions with that?
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna nitpick a little bit here. Don't take this personally. The community has switched over from saying preferred pronoun just because it is their pronouns, but this language is used a lot.
Okay, so preferred. Wait. So preferred implies that I know I'm not this, but I would like to be this, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas saying like this is my pronoun is like this is my pronoun, right?
Yeah.
So preferred kind of encourages dysphoria, I guess, maybe.
It's just the language around it is suggesting that these are the pronouns I prefer, but like there's just this weird, no, it's just someone's pronouns. I don't say my preferred name is Eva Unilove. No, my name just is Eva Unilove.
I see. Yeah. So correct pronoun would be the better way to say it, says White Girl Pro. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. Sorry for the, but I'm just like, hey, just a side note.
Tally's totally up for it. You can beat her up. It's okay.
Thank you, Tally. I appreciate you hearing me there. As you said, someone who is born a gender and dresses the same gender does not necessarily identify as that gender. This is kind of, it's a little bit difficult. What I would suggest is just, if you are not sure, I would just default to their name all the time. And then if you get the chance, pull them aside and say, hey, do you mind me asking, what are your pronouns? But I know that it can be uncomfortable in like a group setting to be asked that, especially if it is a binary trans person who is Contra points, if anyone's familiar, describes it as throwing glitter spaghetti at a wall and hoping it sticks, trying to really present as femme, and getting asked your pronouns can be a little bit just disheartening. But at the same time, you don't want to mess them up. So if you can ask them discreetly, do that. If you don't feel comfortable asking them, just use their name over and over again.
Got it. Okay, I think I would be able to do that. Tally, does that make sense as a good answer?
Another small thing I might like, if you didn't get the introduction, I'd say, hey, I didn't get to meet you yet. My name is Eva Unilove. I go by they, them pronouns. Could I get your name and pronouns?
Yes.
Or,
Okay.
But
yes.
That would be pretty forward.
I've seen people, okay, so Rosalind brings up a good point, and I've seen people do this quite often, is I always try to default to they, them with people when I don't know their pronouns. Is that accurate? Is that what we're supposed to do now? Like, and by we, I mean like society, not...
That's what I do online when I can't see anyone. I don't know if any of you caught the drama. I try to avoid Twitter drama, but Contra just got like... I think Contra was making a fair point that for someone who is a binary trans person, this can be really painful. But as for a non-binary trans person, not necessarily, but it kind of points out their transness. But I understand, like, I also, when it's online and I don't know someone's pronouns, I just default to they, them. But understanding that for binary trans people, it can be like, I know Contra feels very strongly about this. And so I'm a little bit like shaky on this ground because I do that as well. But I think with binary trans people, it can be a little more difficult. So,
well, that's exactly what I thought, because you run into the issue of calling somebody they, implying like a strangeness, the they, right? Implying like an object. Is that what I'm trying to say? I don't know what I'm trying to say.
a lot of people do see they as a little less humanized.
Yes.
But
Okay. Thank you. Humanizing. That's the word I was looking for.
I wouldn't necessarily entirely agree, but for some people, it is degendering them.
Yes.
Degendering as in like it's a gender neutral. Suddenly
Yes.
you remove a part of their identity, and that is difficult for some binary trans people.
Okay. So I think the lesson here is try to ask if you can, and then just do your best. Just do your best the rest of the time. I've been working hard on reworking on just saying they them more if I don't know somebody's gender. So I can understand that it's difficult, but
I'm a great person to practice with.
apparently, and I'm trying. I think I only corrected myself once, but that doesn't mean I messed up once. So I want to clarify. I purged somebody, and they asked a very fair question, and potentially they weren't a troll. But I'm 12, and I don't know if I'm gay, straight, or bi. How can I know my sexuality? So you were purged not for your question. I just want to make that clear. You were not purged for your question, but because this is a plus 18 stream, and you're legally not supposed to be in here. So by you letting us know your age, we cannot entertain you further in the stream because we could potentially get in trouble. So, okay. Tally's awesome mod. Okay, great. So that was taken care of. But I just, in case somebody else saw that and saw I purged them, I didn't want to miss like a confusion as to why they were purged. I do not want to get into any legal trouble. That's it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh yes. Okay. So I am. Hi, lovely lady duck. So the questions are closed, Marshall Carl, and I do believe that we did touch upon that. So in what ways does the capitalistic for-profit system devalue the emotional mental health work that women do in their relationships?
Ooh. Yeah, I love that question.
Yeah.
Did you want to?
No,
hit
go
it really
for
quick?
it. If you have the time, this is now we're kind of like totally on your time. So if you have the time, please go ahead and answer.
Yeah, Marshall, I like this question. So women's work in general, including mental health work, emotional work, housework, and areas where women have moved into the work sphere as well, that it was previously men's work, but they moved in because of the World War, for example. Those tend to drop in value. The way that we view women's work, we either don't pay it or we pay it less. So in what ways does a capitalistic for-profit system devalue the emotional mental health work? I would just say that we are not trying, whoever is in control of the capital, of what is making the products, these people are going to be trying to pay the absolute least to their workers.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can somehow, which we've seen this happen historically, in them saying, well, women don't have to pay for a family, whereas men do. The fuck are you talking about? Right?
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
But this kind of translates over in just recognizing that we don't pay for housework. We don't pay for emotional
Right.
work,
That's the issue.
for,
That is the issue, is that is also for like work that you should be paid for and you're not. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Lovely lady. Look, sorry to, but I hear you.
No,
I hear
go
you.
for it. You can address my chat at any time. I don't have a monopoly on answering, especially when I have other Twitch streamers on. I'm always like, do your thing, do the Twitch thing. You know what to do. Yes. Big example is doctors in Russia. Being a doctor was considered a woman's job, and it's so much lower paid compared to other countries. That is a thing. I mean, that's slowly changed, but that is a thing because it's in Russia it was considered a caregiver role. Although a lot of people have talked about the fact, a lot of Russians will come out and talk about the fact that women have been in the workforce in Russia for like at least 100 years, and so people talk about the fact that like Russia is ahead in gender equality, and I'm like, have you seen your gay rights? No, you don't get to say that. Sorry, bye. Yeah. And I don't know if you know, I'm Russian, so I totally have free range.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I moved here when I was 14, so I have free range to tell everybody when they're doing poopy dukes. Yeah.
You wrote a blog post about this.
I did.
I thought you did.
Probably, maybe. I don't know. If you read my blog, holy guacamole, thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. I swear you wrote a blog post regarding immigrants and immigration.
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you for reading that. Oh, I didn't think actually, that was one I didn't think anybody read. Thank you so much for looking at that. Jesse, hi. Thank you so much for the host. Okay, we do have one final question. What do you think about the double standard? I'm going to paste it. What do you think about the double standard some people have about making jokes about women being sexist, but making jokes about men is totally fine?
I think I'd have to have an example of this.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. If you have an example, I know there could be the arguments and I don't think about this a ton. I think about it a little bit regarding Twitch joking about boomers. And there's kind of the almost okay. Making jokes about women is punching down in the reverse. That's what I was just gonna explain before. Is some people might argue that it's punching up rather than punching down. So the idea being like we are basically going after whoever's in power, right? But I don't, other than like jokes that are like the one I always think of is jokes that are about men not being able to parent. And that always just makes me really angry. So, like, I just get mad because to me, it's like, okay, we're going to make it a funny thing that he doesn't change diapers or that he is incompetent with the kids and therefore he just gets off like away from doing this work. It is fucking work. Like it is. And that's something to be divided. But the stupid man trope, I don't know if that plays into that or what. I'm not super familiar.
I mean, I think you gave a good answer. I do believe. I mean, like I think your response made sense to the question, if that makes sense. I think so. Does anybody else have any questions before we round this out? You were so I totally had to share with you that I'm doing so much better now. I was here a year ago in a very bad place. I escaped my abusive situation. I've come so far. Lots of therapy and hard lessons later. I'm living on my own with my daughter, going to school, working full time. Your streams gave me a lot of strength, so I wanted to say, oh my goodness, thank you so much. That is such an honor for you to come around and want to first of all, to want to tell me that, and then second of all, just for you to, thank you. Thank you. I am very appreciative that you think that. Thank you so much. Thank you. If the fact that I could help in any shape or form is the dream. That's what we're here for.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And I should emphasize, I'm very, very glad that you're in a better situation now, and that's really the main thing. I'm sitting here tearing up thinking about where I was and how many nights I spent being so hurt, and you and the people here loved me. Love me to be brave and escape, so thank you. Thank you for letting me know that we could do that for you. That is the goal of every stream, is to just help people through. So thank you for letting me know. Oh my goodness. Do you have any closing remarks, Eva?
Thank you for doing what you do.
Me?
I think we all appreciate that. Yes,
I love what you do, because you do something so like I couldn't do what you do, and it's incredible to be able to have a resource like you to be able to send people to. Like, yeah.
I don't know that I could do what you do. I know I have people come in sometimes talking about mental health related things, and I'm just like, I'm lost a little bit. Like, I have some base knowledge, and then I'm like, I wish I had anxiety here.
Well, there you go. Well, I send them over to you. You send them over to me.
We'll just trade.
Yeah, we'll just trade these. But mostly, you have a welcoming and warm community, and that's all that that's what matters. So thank you so much for doing all you do. You guys, here are all the links Here are all the links. Please, 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 please go follow Eva. Give them all of our love. Let them know that they are loved. Let their community know that they are loved. I appreciate you so, so, so much. Again, I know I haven't said that enough. But I think that that's it. I'm going to let you go, and then I'm going to do a little bit more of the show. But thank you so much for being here. Gosh, I appreciate you so much. Thank you for bringing your community over here.
Thank you for having me. Have a lovely night.
Have a lovely night.